If you can imagine, women in Travancore, present-day Kerala state of India, were compelled to pay a mulakaram, sometimes known as a breast tax, in the early 1800s. The region was part of one of the 550 Indian states administered by the British at the time. The numerous demands that the British placed on local rulers in the Indian plains caused these kings to scramble to come up with a solution to satisfy the colonialists, even if it meant making life even harder for their subjects once more. Since the Shudra caste is the lowest caste in India, women from that caste made up the majority of the victims. They were not allowed to conceal their own breasts if they had never engaged in the practice of mulakaram, also known as breast tax. Under no circumstances were Shudra caste women permitted to cover their chests. To collect this tribute from any lower caste lady who had attained puberty, representatives of the royal family would go door to door. The tax collector used her bare hands to feel the woman's breasts in order to accurately measure their size and perform a calculation. The main purpose of this tax's introduction was to demean and humiliate those from lower castes. The constraints set by this levy were not applicable to upper-class women, and they were free to conceal their breasts. A person's social standing at the time was established by their caste, which required clear identification in connection to how they dressed. Wearing particular attire allowed for this. By further tearing apart the social fabric of the nearby Indian population, mulakaram served the dual function of demeaning the lowest caste and raising money through commodity taxes. The impoverished and other members of the lower classes were never intended to wear clothing. The breast tax was only implemented in order to maintain the caste system that already existed. It had no other use. Those who were considered to be of the lowest castes, especially the poor, were never given the right to wear clothing because it was deemed to represent wealth and prosperity. During this period, the Syrian Christian community and the Roman Catholic Church both started to take shape. It was thought that becoming a Christian would help one escape the system's escalating oppression and provide them a better chance at life. Christian women were allowed to cover their breasts with a piece of clothing called a kuppayam, which looked like a jacket. However, they were not allowed to wear the upper cloth in the same way as Nair women, who wore it by wrapping the material in a specific way around their torsos. This was done in order to preserve the two parties' obvious and separate hierarchy. The Christian Nada ladies were not quite satisfied with this idea and asked to be allowed to wear the upper cloth, similarly to how the Nair women did. The upper caste's emotions of hostility toward the lower caste grew over time as a result of the spread of Christianity. The Channar Revolt or Channar Lahla, which occurred as a result, was a string of violent clashes that took place in the Travancore region in southern Kerala. Women wearing blouses were made to take them off in front of the public, and homes and churches were set on fire. In the end, Nangeli, whose name means the beautiful one, succeeded in rewriting the history of the rebellion when she sent a shock signal throughout the entirety of southern India. Unrest was widely felt as a result. The woman who went by the name Nangeli belonged to a lower socio-economic caste. The Cherthala region, which was distinguished by its absence of a bustling metropolitan core and proximity to the countryside, provided her and her husband with a tranquil home life. She worked as a farm laborer, performing manual labor. Nangeli was a woman with an extremely rare mix of gorgeous, beautiful looks and a keen mind. Her daring set her apart from those who belonged to the lowest castes. But because of her attractiveness and the way people from higher castes treated her, she found herself in a dreadful predicament. Both verbal and non-verbal types of harassment were routinely directed towards Nangeli. The fact that she endured such treatment did not diminish her ability to protect the rights of young women in her community and society from sexual exploitation by those from higher castes. She reached the decision that enough is enough and worked to end the injustice. The governmental ban on mulakaram was challenged by Nangeli in 1803. She explained to the audience how she started covering her breasts by wearing a top. Nangeli was then made to remove her robe in front of everyone after being summoned to face the music. The story of Nangeli's disobedience spread from person to person until a tax collector named Parvatiyar and some royal army troops showed up at her house. They informed Nangeli of the total amount of taxes she had to pay. The only option was to pay, or else suffer considerably more serious consequences. She entered the room and made a bold decision while carrying herself with poise. Instead of placing the money on a plantain leaf, as she had originally intended, she chopped off her breasts with a sickle knife and delivered it to him that way. The place where she cut off her breast was Mulachaprambu. She had sliced one of her breasts, and there was a great deal of bleeding, which ultimately led to her body failing. She passed away as a result of losing consciousness. In a show of defiance against the breast tax, Chirukandan, her husband, killed himself by jumping into the cremation fire as she was being burned. The fact that Nangeli's story is the first known case of a man submitting to sati makes it particularly important. Her death fueled the anger of the people, and as a result, there were large-scale protests against the king. Because he was concerned for his safety and was under pressure from the Madras Presidency in 1924, the king allowed all ladies to cover their breasts. Nangeli's bravery led to the end of the abhorrent breast tax, and Indian women will always be grateful to her.